Story 1. I knew a couple who had been married for 25 years and were always supporting each other in what they wanted to do, got on well, doted on their daughter, shared hobbies, and from the outside seemed happy. She called me to say they were divorcing, and when I asked if there was anything I could do to help, or if she would like me to babysit while they went to couples counseling, she said no. He wanted the heat on all day, every day, and she found it too warm. So there was no way to recover from this. I'm assuming there was more to it. If I take it at face value that it was too warm in the house, I'd put money on her also being in menopause, at which point having a house kept very warm could feel like a torture chamber. And that's also a fun life stage where you can become very fed up with all the accumulated bullshit from the previous 25 years. Story 2. Apparently, from what my dad told me, my mom divorced him because in a past life, she was a Native American, and my dad was the cowboy that killed her. My dad realized the crazy and did not fight it. Oh, and apparently she told him there's an entity on Jupiter who protects Earth from world-ending asteroids. So thanks to that entity, I guess. Story 3. I'm getting divorced because my wife found out the only thing that helps her depression is my modafinil. She figured out how to order them from India, takes them at 5 to 10 times the dosage, then hallucinates about me having affairs. Best part is, none of her piece of shit family and friends have the guts to tell her it isn't real. And I'm not talking about things that can go either way. My wife accused me of staying in a hotel in Vegas with my girlfriend instead of going to work. I left the house at 7 p.m. and was home at 6 a.m., and I live in Philadelphia. She even has a folder on her phone labeled evidence, with hundreds of screenshots of absolute nonsense. It's heartbreaking. Story 4. The dumbest excuse I have ever heard was when my now ex-wife told me we needed to divorce because a palm reader said I wasn't her soulmate. Apparently, the guy she was fucking behind my back for months was her soulmate, and had nothing to do with why we needed to divorce. Story 5. The husband laughed at a joke that was made at the wife's expense. It was their son's birthday party, and things had been tense for a while, but they'd been trying to work on the marriage. A relative was lighting the birthday candles, and the wife said, "Why didn't you start lighting from the middle instead of the edge?" The relative retorted, "I thought about doing it that way, but I was worried you'd have nothing to complain about." The husband laughed, the wife stormed off, and that was the end of that. As is always the case, there was more to it. That was just the straw that broke the camel's back. Story 6. My half-aunt was wanted for murder in Oregon, so her husband said, "Divorce me, and then they can't make me testify against you." So they divorced, and lived together for the next 50 years in Washington state. No, I know, it doesn't make any sense to me either. Story 7. My client and his wife were into a role-playing game. I think Second Life? Everyone had an avatar. I suspect that his and his wife's were much more sprightly than they were in real life. Anyway, he suspected that she was being unfaithful to him in the game, so he created a fake avatar and stalked her in the game. Sure enough, she was running around on him, having virtual sex with another bloke. Or bloke avatar, anyway. That was it. That sounds extremely like Second Life. I would say that like 60 to 70% of people in Second Life are benign or friendly, just absolutely stuck in 2006 in a very real way. Like, the culture of the Second Life spaces they visit has gone virtually unchanged since pre-2010. The kind of places and people where you hear a song from 2012 and go, "Oh wow, some modern music." The other 30 to 40% are like, absolutely buck wild. I met someone at a grimdark bar, owned by a Harley Quinn and Joker roleplayer duo who were surprisingly nice, whose profile was 100% serious that she was the ghost of famed pirate Mary Read. In Second Life, I think she was spooning with a succubus. Like, she wasn't rude or anything, but just an absolute cryptid. But within that 30 to 40%, there are like a niche of even stranger people. I'm talking about people who spend real money to buy role-playing HUDs that require you to spend even more real money to buy virtual food to eat for sustenance, and that food has a real-life expiry date. at which point the food disappears or is inedible. A friend who deep dived into learning about this stuff found out that apparently farming virtual worms to grow crops for this particular HUD is a decent way to make money. The drama among these people, whose second life basically is their first life, is absolutely insane. We loaded into a virtual Walmart parking lot to find people having a whole-ass screaming fight about if someone was sleeping around and being a skank in Second Life. I don't really have a conclusion to this, but I 100% believe it. There is a breed of Second Life player who gets way too invested, and before you know it, they have Second Life children. Story 8. When I was young, I asked my grandparents a couple times why they divorced. They couldn't stand each other at all, so I was always very proud of them for at least being able to agree to tell me that they divorced over a TV. She wanted it, he didn't. "They're of the devil," he told me. "You just don't throw out someone's TV." She was still upset about it even 15 years after their divorce. Last year, I was Googling someone else just to see what I could find on him. I still have no information on his current whereabouts, but I did get a result for a court summary he was mentioned in during my grandparents' divorce. I read that whole thing to find what really happened, and I shit you not, it ended with the judge declaring that the TV was the cause of their divorce. There were 2 other potential cases brought up, an alleged affair, and I don't remember the other. But the judge said they weren't causes because of timing, lack of evidence, and other closely occurring events. Story 9. He was flamboyantly gay. Somehow, she missed what even the kids knew. They went on their honeymoon. He came home and made sure everyone knew how disgusted he was. Humiliated that lady and discussed private moments. Never saw them together after the wedding, and she went on to do well for herself. Story 10. My childhood friend married a girl I warned him about. He turned on me hard and accused me of wanting her for myself. Okay, homie, you do you. She cheated on him on the honeymoon night. Had something going with her ex on the side. My cousin was previously engaged to a girl like 8 years ago. She cheated on him a few months before the wedding, and he broke it off. Fast forward a couple of years, and he tells me he's having a kid, and that she's the mother. They're now married and have another baby, and I am terrified of what may come. Story 11. She met a convict grifter 30 years younger who became her sugar baby. She proceeds to pour money on him. He gets arrested and breaks his parole, but all of her money went to his commissary. Finally, he gets out, and they have like a few months together before he ditches her for his meth dealer. A destroyed family over a jerk. Thanks. Story 12. My friend quit her job and decided she wanted to be an artist, and made no money at it. Her husband worked at the same place she did. When she left, it caused so much drama, and they were bad-mouthing her so bad that he had to quit. He started doing freelance work, which didn't pay as much, but it was something. They lost the house and car because they couldn't afford it if she wasn't working. She blamed him and left him because he wasn't being a good provider. He ended up getting a job in his field, and 18 years later, she still isn't making any money doing her art. Story 13. My auntie divorced because they squeezed the toothpaste from different ends. One of them likes to squeeze the tube from the bottom and the other from the top. She remarried and is happy with her second husband. And yes, it actually was about toothpaste. And they had their own tubes each. Story 14. My friend told me of a couple he knew who already had a rocky relationship. They were having curry in a nice little restaurant, and the husband suddenly screamed, "Hi-ya!" and karate chopped the stack of papadums. That was the final straw. She started the divorce the next day. Story 15. I knew a guy who got divorced because he and his wife stopped enjoying sex with each other. I asked him if he had talked to her about what she likes and tried doing more foreplay. He said no, and was absolutely not willing to do either thing. Basically expected her to just deal with him going in dry for the rest of their lives. Story 16. Before Jay walked down the aisle, she said, "I don't love this guy." She refused to call off the wedding because all of the money her parents had spent, and the guests were all there. She divorced a month later. Story 17. When I was a kid and I asked my mom why my grandpa and grandma broke up, she said they liked different things. Grandpa liked to watch golf and grandma liked to watch the news. I'm sure she was just dumbing it down for child me, but I always thought that was so stupid. Your mother was probably trying to prevent your childlike brain deciding one grandparent was good and the other bad, and at fault for the split, whilst sparing you the hurtful things that were going on between them. She kept it simple and neutral. I wish other parents were so careful. Story 18. One of my friends got married at 22 and divorced a year later. The reason? Her husband sucked at providing her with a warm bath at the right temperature. Yes, you heard that right. He drew her baths, and she was so picky about the temperature, claiming it was always just this side of too cold. With the plumbing they had, it was a flipping miracle they had any hot water at all, never mind enough to fill a bathtub. Picky Princess got back to her parents, and I've cut contact with her after the divorce. I'm still friends with her ex. Great guy. He put up with way more crap than we would have from her. Story 19. I went to a solicitor to arrange details for my side of an impending divorce from my then wife. I was pretty embarrassed talking about details, as there was no great single reason for it. No cheating, abuse, violence, etc. But a buildup of smaller reasons, which saw us drift apart. The solicitor told me she'd dealt with many couples who divorced like this, and for a lot less. The smallest reason given she ever had for an actual divorce was the fact the husband used to leave his socks on the floor instead of the laundry bin. Nothing else. I'd bet there were other reasons too, but the reason in the paperwork was the socks. Matthew Frey has a great book about this called This Is How Your Marriage Ends. It's not about the socks. It's about not being listened to, being ignored. She probably asked him countless times over years to pick up his socks. He didn't value her feelings enough to just pick up his socks and put them in the laundry bin. And every time she had to do it for him, she was reminded, he doesn't listen to me, he doesn't value my opinion. And I'd wager the socks were just the beginning. Thanks, Mr. Frey. I was nearly the fool divorced like this too. Story 20. My friend decided he didn't want to work a real job anymore as the breadwinner, and instead flip and trade baseball cards for a living. He was in no shape financially to do this, but this was his dream. He basically bankrupted his family to pursue this passion. Now, he's basically homeless and has no relationship with his school-aged children. But man, that autographed card sure looks cool. Story 21. I read an article a while back about a couple that got divorced for financial reasons. Basically, they were struggling really badly financially, and if they divorced, they would at least qualify for medical insurance, baby supplies, and food assistance. Getting divorced, they could at least make the bare minimum to take care of themselves and their 1 or 2 kids. It was a sad story. Story 22. Friend's wife divorced him so she could travel and attend more conferences and events thrown by the MLM crap she sold. She went from a normal person to an MLM-obsessed entrepreneur that was going to conquer the business world. And he was just too traditional, earning 6 figures working a regular job. Pretty sad. Story 23. My time to shine, I guess. I was too black for him. Mind you, he was black too, but he expected me to tone it down after we got married to look good to his white coworkers. We got in a fight after a Christmas party, our first Christmas married, over the way I was joking with someone, and he got upset. We divorced shortly after. We were both 19. I was high-key dumb for getting married that young. Story 24. My boss just got divorced. His wife was telling people one of her reasons was the amount of toilet paper he used. She was a super coupon clipper, thrifty lady, and would listen when he went to the bathroom to see if he was using too much toilet paper. Story 25. I have heard of a couple of divorces where they get a divorce because the husband wants to sleep with other women. It usually ends with the former wife finding a better man and the former husband being single and not getting laid at all. In each and every one of these cases, everyone could have said beforehand that this is what would happen, because the former husband wasn't attractive and the wife was. But I guess some people just have bad mirrors, or forget to even look in the mirror. Friends of mine got married in their late 20s and early 30s. Had been together since high school. She's a few years younger. He decided he wanted to open the marriage 2 years in. She was devastated, but eventually agreed. He had absolutely zero luck with the ladies. She got a boyfriend. They divorced. He spiraled. She's super happy and has the cutest little girl with the new guy. Story 26. He lost his job and began playing video games 16 to 20 hours a day to manage the stress. Only he kept doing that for 5 years, during which time she was solo parenting their 3 children because he had video game events to tend to, and retraining for a new career so she could support her family on a single income. He refused to take a week off of playing to spend time on family vacation, refused to see a therapist about video game addiction, refused to look for a job because it would all work out, because his wife was busting her hump to be a single mom with a full-time job. Finally, she said, video games or me? And he said, I think you're being really unreasonable and controlling. It's not a big deal if I play for a couple hours after the kids go to bed. She subpoenaed his Valve playing time records for the prior year when he kept insisting he only played a couple hours a day, and she was overreacting. As far as I know, he lives with his mother, plays video games, doesn't pay child support because he still hasn't found a job, and his visitation weekends involve the kids playing video games. Story 27. My wife is in therapy now, and we're working on reconciliation. I truly believe the events that have led us here are related to her crippling anxiety, so I'm hopeful. With that being said, she asked me for a divorce 5 times in a year and a half, all over very stupid things. I think what takes the cake, though, is when we had just argued about something, and I was feeding our cats. We have a spoon next to the sink that we specifically use for feeding them, and feeding them is always my chore. So, as I was reaching for said spoon, she made a curt comment about making sure I used that one. I told her I didn't need her to tell me how to do the chores I do every day, and she told me I'd better pack my shit and move out then. Story 28. My uncle divorced my aunt when I was 5 or 6. I was always told it was because they were better friends than husband and wife. But 2 years ago, my uncle passed away, and he left a lot of money to his siblings. His ex-wife tried to sue, which caused a massive amount of family drama. I was pulled in because I was there to help my mom, who didn't care about the money but was roped in legally because of my uncle putting her down in some of his documents, and she wanted to vent to me about it. Then I started hearing all these wild stories about my uncle and aunt and why they actually got divorced. Apparently, they got divorced because one of my uncle's dreams was to own a small kidney-shaped swimming pool in his backyard, only about 4 to 5 feet deep max. He saved up and had one installed, which led to massive fights between him and my aunt. The reason my aunt was so against it? She was afraid that the pool would start to breed fish, and those fish would evolve into something that would kill her. I really wish I was making this up, but there were letters that my mom was reading through from my aunt talking about the fish breeding pool that would kill her. Then, during the sit-down with the lawyers over the money stuff, all of the siblings were there, and my aunt was as well, she began ranting about the fish pool, and that he didn't leave her money because of the fish pool. It was not a fish pool. It never was a fish pool. It was only ever used for swimming and floating around. I hate my family sometimes.